So we're just going to have a chat. My name's Andrew Crummy. I'm the son of Helen Crummy, who was in the film, and my mum was in the film. She's the school teacher, and my dad was the janitor at the beginning of my childhood as well. So I'm for a nanosecond in the school group who were singing the song, but I was half of me at the very back, so I'm not really in it. So we're going to have a chat about what do you think of what you've just seen?
Oh,
do you want?
Sure, yeah. I don't think, do we need these?
You probably
Can you hear me? You see, I'm an actor, and I'm trained to project. I'll speak through this if you want. I was moved to tears. I mean, literally moved to tears. I could hardly watch the last bit for greeting, really. It's so moving. I think it's a wonderful piece of work. I think John and Jack did a great job in this. And I think it's a fabulous and fitting tribute to Bill Douglas. I can't think of anybody could have done it better. It's a beautiful tribute to him. And to Peter Jewell, without whom, really, Bill wouldn't have been Bill and wouldn't have done what he did. And I think Peter played such a part in his life. And for me, this is the first time I've seen this. I haven't seen this before. So sitting watching that for the first time, one of the reasons that I was so tearful at the end and so moved, like I am at the moment, is because I'd forgotten. And it came back to me just how privileged I was to have played a part in the life of a man like that. Because I've never worked with anybody else, and I've worked all my life since I was 14 as an actor, but I've never worked with anybody as inspiring and as wonderful as Bill Douglas. He was truly a great, great man of the cinema, and a great human being. And that's the best tribute I think anybody could have made. So there, that's my thinking.
Anyway, what's your response to seeing this documentary?
Well, it was a privilege to be involved, and I think what it makes me feel is that the power of film, the power of creativity, empowers people, and I kind of see Bill and Peter's life kind of split into two main areas. There's the filmmaking and there's the fantastic cinema museum at Exeter, which I'd encourage everyone to visit. There's over 80,000 exhibits there. But the point is that, you get a sense of the struggle of being an artist, you identify with that. But the generosity of Peter and Bill wanting to share their love of cinema, to share their love of collecting artifacts and putting it into a building which is free for everyone to access. And I think what's significant now is that it's got an international reputation. Lots of different filmmakers, writers, producers are donating their own collections to the Bill Douglas Cinema Museum in Exeter. I think there's a momentum growing, or people rediscovering, or a new generation seeing Bill's work for the first time. And it has a kind of visceral quality. And I think what's strange about looking at the trilogy again is that unwittingly it's become historical archive as well. The village of New Craig Hall has completely changed. We tried to save the pedestrian rail bridge that features strongly in my childhood. That wasn't successful, but We did work with local schools. We made some sculptures, and I think the whole idea of sharing that enthusiasm for Bill's work and Peter's, because as Alex said, they were a creative partnership, and with looking at the 8mm films, it's clear that Peter was equally involved with the creative production side of things. So I think it's something that can be shared with more and more people, and in this digital age, it's an ideal opportunity to be promoting it.
So it's it's a beautiful film, tribute to both of them, and it raises lots of interesting issues. And for me, as a visual artist, is my question to you is what makes Bill Douglas the visual and the moving image? What makes him different from other film producers?
I don't know if I can answer that. Every director brings his own vision to whatever he's doing. And in the commercial cinema, most directors are slightly under, not even slightly sometimes, under the control of the producer. And if it's a big commercial film, also under the control of the suits, back in the front room. I mean, I know, for example, Ken Branagh, who's always had control over his own films and made films with his own vision to the forefront. When he did the Thor, which was a huge blockbuster film, he didn't have that kind of freedom anymore to put his own stamp on it. Although I suppose he did in a way, but he said that just Marvel Inc., the Marvel universe, the people who create these characters, were just all over it. Every single aspect. There was nothing that he could do like the kind of freedom that Bill had when he made Comrades or My Infolk. But so Bill had that freedom to a degree. He certainly didn't have much interference when he made the early films, and it seems that the bigger the budget, the more interference you have in your vision. And although, I was there obviously on location when we were making Comrades, and Simon Relf, the producer, was there a lot of the time, and there was just these terrible rows. It was like, as a cast, we would say to each other, "Oh, Mummy and Daddy are fighting again," and it was like that. It's like, "Bill, we've got to get this done. We have to do," and Bill would take none of it. No, Simon, I'm not doing that. Bill, we have to get this done in three setups. Because normally you use one camera when you're filming, so you have to shoot the same scene, the same stuff over and over again from different angles, wide angle, long shot, medium shot, close-ups. And Bill would plan the scene in his head to shoot it in, say, 10 setups. And Simon would go, "Bill, we have to do this in 3. No, Simon. "Bill, we've got to get this done in three setups. We have to do this." "No, Simon." He would not take any nonsense at all. And don't mean nonsense. Simon had a job to do as well. He had to bring the film in, he had to bring it in on budget and on time. And it didn't, I don't think it came in on budget. But then again, and the other thing was that, talking about interference in your vision as a creative filmmaker, Bill was locked out of the cutting room when they came to edit the film, because his vision of it was different from what they wanted. The original film, with the way that Bill wanted it to be, was longer than the version that was released by about an hour, I think, if not more, maybe an hour and a half. And he just refused to compromise. Oh, it's work. It's Hollywood. Hang on. He refused to compromise. He would do things his way, his vision. And that's what art, I mean, let's face it, what art is. That's what you're paying your ticket money to see, is somebody's vision. And in this case, Bill Douglas's vision. But I know from talking to Bill and talking to Peter afterwards, after the event, that Bill had been locked out effectively, and literally locked out of the cutting room while they, I hesitate to say butchered it because it was still a good film. But they cut it, and they cut lots of stuff out. Because Bill originally wanted 2 films. He wanted, if you think a film of 4 or 4.5 even hours length is too long, you're probably right. People might not be prepared to sit through that. But if it's 2 films, they'll go and see a first half, and they'll go back and see a second half. And the first half was going to be Dorset, and the second half was going to be Australia. And the other thing he wanted, which was a genius idea, a real genius idea, was that all the Dorset scenes in the first half of the film were going to be shot in 4:3 format, which is the old cinema, almost a square box sort of format, and in black and white. And then the last Dorset stuff would be the martyrs being shoved downstairs into the lower decks of the ship that was going to take them to Australia, and they're sitting there in chains in the darkness in the hold of this terrible ship. And then the next bit of the film would open up with them coming up. They're in Australia. You'd have the diorama bit showing the ship's passage, and then they'd cut to the ship and hatches opening, and up come the martyrs, pale from being stuck in the gloom for all that time, the journey. And they'd come up, and the film would turn to colour. And not just turn like The Wizard of Oz, not just turn to colour, but change format. It would go from the 4:3 format and go like that. Because he wanted us as an audience to see Australia as how it would have seemed to the martyrs when they got there first. This extraordinary, bright coloured panorama. And he wanted us to feel that. But they said to him, no, we can't do that. That can't be done. Well, it could have been done. They just didn't want to spend the money on doing it. So anyway, that's a rather long-winded answer to your thing. But, Bill was a genuine, one of the few people that I've met, and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, who are just a true cinematic artist, and an artist of the cinema. He was a painter, he painted wonderful pictures, and he described things pictorially. I never got a direction from Bill saying, is that bit, can you just, make it a wee bit, heighten it up a bit, make it, nothing like that. No instructions about, come in from the left, do your bit there, and then walk out to the right. None of that stuff at all. We'd never explained, and you learn very early on not to ask him to tell you things like that. I would say, so listen, Bill, do you want me to stay where I am after you've shouted cut, after the scene's finished, or do you want me to leave the scene? Well, you see, we see this big image of the sun, and then I bet, do you want me to stay still and walk away, Bill? But you learned, and I think they kind of covered that in the film. You learn very quickly to try and see what he saw. That's what he tried to tell you. He tried to let you know what he saw the scene would be like, and how the audience would see it, and for you to interpret that and fill his vision. And he would know when it was right, but if it was wrong, he wouldn't really tell you why it was wrong. Just do that again, so you really had to work hard mentally to do it right. But I've never worked with anybody like him, and I was heartbroken when he left us. I think he could have done more. I think it said it so right in the film that if he'd been French or German or Italian or probably anywhere on the continent, he would have been revered and he would have made so many more films in his short life. But being British and being an independent filmmaker, not so much luck.
What about you, Kenny? What do you think visually? I mean, to me, visually, it's like poetry. Some of the there's a beauty there.
For sure. I mean, what I'm really sort of thinking about is how you manage to communicate these ideas with more people. Next year, for example, will be the 40th anniversary of Comrades, and it seems fitting that it should be relaunched, repackaged, if you like. What I think, although Peter said that Bill wasn't wanting to make a major political point, well, I'm sorry, he was making a very strong political point. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Is that the ghost of Maggie Thatcher? Anyway, I think it would be very timely to represent Comrades next year. There's been a lot of work by a lot of people in researching, reappraising, and for example, Andy Kimpton-Nye persuading Peter that the 8mm films made by Peter and Bill in the 1960s are very valuable. And I think it's clear from what we see in the film that we were getting an insight into how Bill was going to develop as a filmmaker. But in actual fact, even Bill as an actor, I was extremely impressed by. And these were scenes, most of these films were silence, so it's direct theatre, acting, but the use of the camera and the intercuts, even using some archive footage, revealed what was possible. And even more so now, one might argue that filmmaking in its essential sense has become more democratized. Virtually anyone with a phone can make a piece and upload it to YouTube, etc. There's lots of different messages that people can make. But essentially, visual poetry, I think back in the day, the mood in Scotland was not ready for Bill. And arguably, Scotland has always been challenged by creativity, which is...
Are you there, Bill?
is looking at the kind of darker underbelly of our society, you know. But in terms of celebrating visionary work relating to history, Peter and Bill, they've achieved so much, but I think next year there could be even more, and it would be interesting to hear what people feel about the idea of trying to relaunch Comrades as a film and how that would actually be done.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think there's you both said some really interesting things there, and I think it's maybe a good time to open up a bit more. And I think the other thing to remember is we are in the edge of New Craig Hall. Part of my childhood was filmed across, which is now Fort Kinnaird. So with that context of where we are, which is quite particular to where Bill Douglas comes from, but also from the visionary elements you're talking about, and the future, I think, what can be done, because it's obviously an amazing film and it's an amazing heritage. So is there any questions or anybody would like to say any comments? And the microphone will come to you.
It might not necessarily be working through the the speaker, but it's actually quite good because being picked up. So yeah.
I liked what you said about the sound effect. That was a good joke. Could you say that again?
So I couldn't hear that.
So what you said about Bill. Come in, Bill. We can hear you. I thought that was quite good. But his film actually was brilliant.
It's working now.
Yeah, thanks very much. What a beautiful event.
Really
Interesting.
really interested to hear Alex's take on Bill's original vision for the longer two-part film, and just wonder how much of the film that ended up on the cutting room floor was lost, or if that is part of his archive.
Well, is this on? Is it actually working? Is it? Okay. I had a kind of silly dream. It didn't seem silly when I first thought of it. For years, that somehow or other I might be able to, if I dug deep enough, I might be able to find the footage that was cut. Because it's happened before with films. I mean, I think things like, what's it called again? There's been various films where they've found footage that they thought was lost and they've patched it together. A Star is Born with James Mason and Judy Garland is one where they put back a lot of scenes. And I had this dream that if you could get hold of it, the footage, because I was kind of close to Bill with working with him, and he talked about the film and his visions, that I knew, and I'm sure Peter knew better than me, Peter Jewell would have known better than I did, but my dream was that I would find this stuff and put it back together and get something approaching Bill's original vision of the film, because with the onset of digital technology, doing things like stretching the screen and turning it into colour is no big deal anymore, and wouldn't cost very much. But apparently, I did do a wee bit of digging, and it seems that all the stuff that was cut out of the film was just dumped, just ditched. So that's never going to happen. But I think, anybody who'd committed to stay the course and watch, it was still a long film, watch it, would have committed to watch the entire thing. Because it is a bit of a masterpiece. In fact, we used to have a bit of a joke among ourselves on the set when we were making it, was looking forward to, in our minds, to the reviews when they came out, and it was like they were always headed Bill Douglas's flawed masterpiece. And I think, in a sense, that's kind of true, and not because of his fault, but because the film was, in my view, a bit mishandled. And it could have been an exceptional masterpiece. But it's still a masterpiece, but it is a flawed masterpiece. And I'm sure Bill would agree with that. So that's, yeah.
Anyone else?
Any other questions? Any questions? So, I mean, another thing, you could redo your role from the film, couldn't you? You could carry that on.
Which one?
Oh, no,
Which role? Which one of the 14?
Yeah, so is there... You got any more comments, Kenny? What do you think?
Just to repeat the fact that there's, if anyone fancies a day trip to Exeter, it would pay dividends because it's a marvellous location. The university campus is very attractive. You would also see the second Bill Douglas sculpture, which I made, which is outside the museum. But essentially, you might also get a chance to meet Peter Jewell. Peter was 90 recently, and the term living legend is often kind of used for the wrong reasons. But quite honestly, Peter, his experience, in some ways, you know, he has a modesty, but in actual fact, he has a creative ego as well. And that can be seen in the early 8mm films. And even when Peter's speaking, there's a kind of sense of creative joy. And as an artist, I feel one of the greatest pleasures is being able to share creativity with other people of all ages. And Bill has done that. And the Crummy family has also done that. When one thinks of the emerging Craigmillar Festival Society, just to conclude, when I interviewed Helen Crummy, one of the things that she sort of said off camera was that although Bill didn't come back to Scotland very much, he did invest some of his money in Craigmillar Festival Society projects. And that says a lot about the guy. I'd like to believe it says quite a lot about Scots as well, that believe that the next generation, you know, carries the torch, and irrespective of what the political climate is, the arts can change things. And I would just end on that note.
Thank you. So is there any more questions? Anybody, or anybody like to say an interesting statement? Or I think we've witnessed a really great film this afternoon, and I think there's so much to think about that, because there is a great legacy there as well with these films, and the film that we've just seen. I think it's and as you say, if we could remember comrades and celebrate that again in a year's time would be amazing. But it is a great legacy, and I think the other thing is Edinburgh and Craigmillar and Craig Hall, they don't really realise what a great filmmaker and what came out of Bill Douglas, you know, and all the issues that are contained with that. My mum and Bill used to have conversations about poverty. I remember that, and what defines poverty. And Muriel, who's sitting there, she has that knowledge as well of like. So these are really big subjects that need to be discussed more. I think we can't solve them all this afternoon, I don't think, but I think, and the having somebody who was actually on Comrades is a real treat to have here as well. So it's amazing to have this afternoon. So thank you. Unless you want to say a final word, or is it?
No, the only thing I would say, just in finishing, is that it's to my great regret that I never got a chance to work with Bill again. The last time we spoke, before he died, was he called me up and asked me to meet him, come into Soho and meet up with him. So we had lunch in Soho, and he talked about his next project, which was he'd written a script for James Hogg's Confessions of a Justified Sinner. And I'd not long read the book. I came to it quite late and just thought it was incredible. And the idea of Bill Douglas, I couldn't think of anybody else who could have brought it to life, the book, to life better than Bill. He would have made a wonderful job of it. And he said to me, he said, I want you to play the devil. If you know the book at all, Gil Martin. And I remember just my heart, when Bill asked me to do Comrades, my heart just about jumped out my chest with excitement. And I got the same thing when he talked about that. I thought, this is it. This is the big one. You think there's always a moment in actors' lives when something happens, they do something, and it just puts you on a whole other level. And I thought, this is it. This is going to be the best thing I'll ever do. And then he died. And I'd hesitate to tell people that because it always sounds like, oh, bugger, poor me, he died, I didn't get to do it. But there's a part of that that's true. But the other part is that none of you or anyone else ever got to see Confessions of a Justified Sinner. directed by Bill Douglas. So that's about the only regret in my life, that I never got the chance to work with him again. I think he was a genius.
And I think on that note, we shall bring it to, we shall meet again in a year's time to celebrate Comrades. That's what.
Yeah.